Hey everybody, it's Brian. This video is split into two parts. In the first, I'll lay out the reasons for why you should commission art for your tabletop RPG game. In the second part, I'll show off a bunch of art that I had commissioned a couple of years ago for the first major D&D campaign that I ran. I actually recorded the second part first as a bit of unscripted conversation explaining the art and the characters. So the tone and pacing of the second part are going to be different from this more scripted, first part, the introduction. But I wasn't sure how best to use that original recording until someone suggested I pair it with this first part, with the second part acting as sort of proof of concept, me showing the world how much I enjoyed working with the artist, enjoying the art itself, and just sort of remembering it together. Okay, let's get into it. Why should you commission art, especially with so much AI generated stuff easily available? I'll give you 4 reasons. First, real art is just better. You and the artist have control over the art in ways that you don't with AI. I still can't get Midjourney to consistently make tieflings, bugbears, or hobgoblins that look anything like how I want them to look. 2, you develop a stronger connection with the art. It takes time, money, and thoughtfulness to commission art, both from you and from the artist. It takes commitment. That alone will just definitionally give you a stronger connection with the art because you have put in time and effort in ways that we don't when we're making AI art. And I think that's a big deal, especially in a world where people don't really, it's hard to make connections, I guess is the way I would say it. It's hard for people to actually connect with people and with things that people made. It's actually not hard. I shouldn't say that. It's just that there is so much in the way of those kinds of connections. So actual art made by an artist that you have commissioned is a direct connection between all three of those things, again, in a way that AI art is not. And that feels really good once you do that. Third, you can develop a connection with the artist. I already gave this one away a little bit. If you treat the artist with respect, and I'm going to have another video on that, on how to commission art. If you treat the artist with respect and they reciprocate, that can turn into a real fruitful, a real working relationship. And that's just nice. You can commission art, maybe 1 or 2 pieces a year, every couple of years, and you can see how they grow as an artist. And you can react to that, and you can say, hey, I love this, and I would real love to do something like that, and here's my idea. And then they get excited because now you're maybe not challenging them, but you're giving them something new to work on, and they can grow their art and develop as an artist in ways that doesn't happen again with AI art. And that can become, and that's on display, I think, in the second part of this video, where all of the art that I talk through, it was commissioned through one artist. And I just had a blast working with that artist, Mike Pape. And so it's just uh, that connection can become something meaningful. And fourth and finally, it makes a real difference in people's lives. Selling art is how some people make a living. And our world is made better and brighter by artists. Imagine a world where every piece of art, when you go to Google or whatever your browser is, and search for a picture of something, and every piece of art is AI generated. And then AI scrapes all that previously AI generated stuff, and it just becomes an Ouroboros of slop. And we can't find real art. We don't want that world. We want a world with artists. Of course, it's not realistic to commission art for every aspect of a game, every NPC, every location. That's not realistic. That's where the AI generated stuff can help flesh out the visuals, flesh out your world. I do that. If I need a quick image of an NPC, I try looking on Google or Pinterest. If I don't see anything I like there, then I try to generate it. But that might be an NPC that I only use for 1 or 2 games. That's not sure, right? But those capstone pieces, player characters, memorable villains, a final battle, that's where commissioned art can really elevate the game and leave you with some very great memories. And to see that in action, let's transition to the second part of this video. This is me from a few weeks ago, story time with Brian at night with a cup of tea. I hope you enjoy it. See ya. So the first piece of art we are going to look at is this one right here, and this is Caius. Caius is a Shadar-kai elf barbarian. He is one of the player characters. The first 6 pieces of art we'll look at will be the characters, and then after that we'll look at the villains. So Caius, the Shadar-kai elf barbarian, is... Look, check this out. This is just... we're going to do a lot of zooming in to look at some of the really great work that Mike did. The beads. And normally I feel like elves, are not often barbarians, and they actually make great barbarians. Not least of which Shadar-kai can teleport, and they have resistances to a lot of stuff that sort of balance out the weaknesses of a barbarian. This hammer is called Fury Heart. This is an artifact hammer that I gave to this character near the end of the last campaign, and it's from the heart of a volcano, essentially. Can cast fireball, can create earthquakes, I think, lots of crazy stuff. And I just think, I love how this looks like it's molten lava at the center of this hammer. And then you can see the light of the hammer is sort of reflecting on the eyes of Caius. This is just really lovely. All right, that's Caius. This is Claw. Claw is a Goliath nature cleric. The cloak, which is the star of this painting, I think, is called the Mantle of the Wilds. It's similar to the Fury Heart hammer in the last piece of art. This is something that I gave to this character near the end of the last campaign as sort of a capstone magic item. And then this coming out is meant to illustrate rather primal savagery, which is the cantrip, the melee spell attack cantrip that nature clerics get. That was sort of this character's calling card. When he wasn't casting high level cleric spells, he was in melee throwing primal savagery around. But this is just really fantastic. Claw was the optimist of the group, and you can really see on his face, he's looking up, he's hopeful. This really captured the facial expression, really captured Claw's personality. And then obviously the leaves of the cloak are just phenomenal, sort of green, transitioning to fall at the edges. This is just beautiful. The mantle sort of changes size and color depending on the seasons, and it's at its most powerful in the autumn, which is what this is meant to represent here. This is Eltorin. Eltorin is a half-elf warlock. He has his familiar, the Owl Stormy, here on his staff, and let's zoom in a little bit. So this character was heavily inspired by Gambit, the X-Man, and you can tell from the facial expression, from the cloak, right, the huge collar and the big lapels. It's very inspired by Gambit's coat, Gambit's leather coat. And you can see just the attitude coming off of this character, the pose, really, really wonderful. This warlock is a celestial warlock, and his patron is an angel or celestial called the Storm Crow, which is one reason for the coat to have this sort of crow or raven-esque vibe to it. The coat is called Corvus Veil, and this staff here is called Soul Shepherd. And this character's patron, the celestial patron, is also the mother of an ASMR character that we'll look at in a minute. And the fact they had 2 different relationships with the same person made for a lot of really great mom jokes over the course of the campaign. Okay, this is Imsaho. He's obviously a tiefling. He's a blood hunter tiefling, which if you zoom in, you can see some of the scars from activating his, is it Crimson Right, Crimson Mastery, right here too. He was a crossbow master, blood hunter with a hand crossbow here, And you can see there's a bit of a Nightcrawler vibe going on here with the smoke, the black smoke, because this player rather, really leaned into that kind of play style, meaning movement. He loved moving around. He was often on a broom. And then eventually, so the crossbow that he's holding is a artifact called Absolve. And that's actually a great story. So it was I originally planned to give him Condemn, which is one of the magic items from one of the Critical Role books. I think it's a heavy crossbow, but I converted it into a hand crossbow because that's what he preferred playing with. And the whole idea was that he was going to be his devil lineage. He was going to maybe pursue that or be offered a chance to pursue that. And in doing so, he was tasked with creating Condemn, the crossbow from the Critical Role source book. And instead, the player sort of pulled a 180 and decided to try to dedicate the crossbow to a different god, a god of good, goddess in this case. And during the ritual to create it, to forge this hand crossbow, instead of Asmodeus being honored, this other goddess was honored, and Condemn became Absolve, which I think was phenomenal storytelling on the part of the player. But the reason I'm saying all this is because this crossbow, whenever he makes the attack action, every time he shoots the crossbow, so twice at his level, he can teleport 10 feet every time he shoots it. So every time he shoots, he's like poof, shooting around, or bamfing around, rather. I also like it's almost like a Van Helsing sort of vibe going on here, like Witch Hunter-esque with the style of the clothing and the cloak, which I really love, and it really fits, I think, the Blood Hunter narrative or flavor. All right, this is Radan. Radan is the Aesmar I mentioned earlier. So his mother is the celestial patron of Eltorin, the warlock that we looked at a little bit ago. Radan is a paladin, but he's a dexterity paladin. So this player did something a little bit different and leaned into the dexterity angle of the paladin. I don't know if you were to ask the player if he would regret that or not, because it definitely made for some interesting dynamics, but I always feel like sometimes you can play the limitations that you create around a character are often where the best storytelling comes from, is when a player hits those limitations and has to navigate them somehow. And that player did a really good job of doing that with this character. And this paladin originally started out as a vengeance paladin, but over the course of the campaign, his oath of vengeance was fulfilled, and he became an Oath of the Open Seas paladin, which is, I think a Critical Role subclass. I can't remember actually. But the aura that comes from Oath of the Open Seas, which is he can't be restrained, is a huge pain. I mean, props to him. But the amount of times I have said, "You're restrained," and he has said, "No, I'm not," is in the dozens, I think, at this point. And it's just, at this point, it's almost a running gag. Although I always forget, and he gets to say it with a smug look on his face every time, and it's just magic. It's part of the fun of the game. All right. This is Rex. This is the last of the player characters we'll look at. And depending on how plugged in you are to the D&D or tabletop RPG art scene, you may have seen Rex before. Not necessarily this image, but all of these characters Mike did prior versions of as well. I originally commissioned art from Mike, I think in 2020 or 2021, and then I did it again for the end of the campaign, which is from 2022. And so the first images of the characters we're not going to look at, frankly, because for the most part, Mike really stepped up his game between the two. But the one that he did of Rex, the first one, is of Rex he's a Black Dragonborn rogue, Rex in a sewer, and I think that's I think it's for sale as a print on his store. It really made the rounds a little bit. So yes, Black Dragonborn rogue, which is a great combination. I mean, you don't see a lot of Dragonborn rogues, but he really leaned into it. I love the look on his face, sort of leaning back, appraising or eyeing up whatever his target is going to be, hand on a dagger. Just really very cool. And even though the colors all are very similar, right? The color, it almost looks flat. You don't want to say it's flat because it's not. And that's what I think is so amazing about this one, is that it's interesting to look at. There's depth and light without there being actually like a wide palette. And I find that dynamic, I guess, really, really fascinating, and I think speaks to how good Mike is. Rex as a character started out as sort of a misanthrope, and I guess he still is a misanthrope a little bit. He's very much enjoys being an assassin rogue, but he went through a character arc where he essentially, faced his past. Very classic. Was the son of this infamous villain, presumed dead. The villain, not the character. His father was presumed dead, and then, of course, the father was not dead. He returned to become the capstone villain of the whole campaign. We have some art of him we'll look at the end of this. And so Rex went from being a outcast to being a hero in a really great little character arc. All right, that was all the players. Now we're going to look at some villains that I had Mike commission. These villains I thought were going to be the villains for the whole campaign. I commissioned the art because I thought I was going to get a lot of use out of this art because they were going to be around for a long time. And obviously that was not the case. So here we go. This is Anchor. He is a turtle. He was inspired by a barbarian, or rather his stat block is inspired by a barbarian. Excuse me, I'm going to take a drink of tea. And he is the servant. Him and his crew serve a kraken that is chained, magically imprisoned at the bottom of the ocean. But the kraken has found a way to reach out and influence minds and promise rewards if certain individuals would try to free him, or it, I guess, rather. And this group of villains ended up being called either Team Kraken or the Kraken Crew, are the individuals that the Kraken has convinced or rewarded, or choose your term, bribed to help free it. And Anchor is the muscle, one of the muscles of that group. I love this one though, right? The lines, the sort of the eye, the face in this is just amazing. Really captures the skin of a tortoise. The torque, the piercings, the whalebone haft, anchor, sort of bludgeoning weapon, right? Imagine this turtle swinging this thing at you. This is Nautilus, Prince of the Tides, or Prince of the Depths, Prince of the Seas. I can't remember what his little moniker was. He is one of the leaders of this Kraken crew, and I think he knows it. Got this gold breastplate, little fish scales. Yeah, he's good looking, and he knows it. The skin, like the blue to purple or pink, it's just phenomenal. Right. And then his trident. Nautilus is not the leader of the Kraken crew, but he is the sort of battlefield commander. And this group, this Kraken crew, was really inspired by the Black Iron Pact that Matt Colville ran in the chain. And the stream or recording, whatever, if it's on YouTube or Twitch, I don't remember, of him creating the Black Iron Pact, their abilities and so on, was really inspiring to me as a DM. It probably was for a lot of DMs, considering how many of these villain parties they put in the Flea Mortals book. Clearly there was a demand for them, and there certainly was from my end, because I used this group of villains. They were inspired by the Black Iron Pact, and I have used other groups either straight out of Flea Mortals or inspired by them and created by me in campaigns since then, just because the concept is too good. It's too fun. The players always recognize another group of, quote unquote heroes or villains. The players always have such a strong reaction to NPCs that seem almost but not quite like them, right? Going after the same thing, or they have goals that the players can understand. And so yes, it's fun to fight a lich who wants to turn everybody into undead, but it's also a lot of fun to fight a group of NPCs that are so close but so far, the other side of a coin from the players. The players always react so strongly to that in a really positive way. Anyways, Nautilus. This is Scylla, as in Scylla and Charybdis from the Greek mythology. This is where her name comes from. She's a sea witch of some kind. I don't know what she is, except that she's creepy. There's eyeballs. She's got some fish tucked away for later to chow down on. This little fellow here is about to get the rusted fillet knife or gutting knife. And, one eye, almost like a flounder, I guess. So flounders have two eyes on the same side of their head. But there's something about this that really works, along with, the netting. This was maybe my favorite art that Mike did of the Kraken Crew. I love this one. It's fantastic. Scylla's stat block was Warlock inspired, and she was intended to be one of the more dangerous members of the Kraken Crew, except that on the opening round of combat, when the two groups finally ran into each other, Rex went first, and he is an assassin rogue, which means when he goes first, or when he acts before an enemy, he gets advantage on attack rolls against that enemy, and he rolled a critical hit. And so that didn't kill Scylla right away, but it took her down to, like, I don't know, 4 hit points or something. She didn't survive, I don't think, to take her turn. So Rex didn't kill her, but she didn't make it to her turn. And so right off the bat, the Kraken Crew was at a disadvantage, down 5 to 6. And I think that's one reason why they didn't end up being a longer term recurring threat like I wanted them to. There were hints, right? I built up to them, but after the combat with them, I wanted at least some or all of the crew to survive and escape, and none of them did, because that's just how the combat went. That's how the dice went. That's how D&D goes sometimes, how tabletop RPGs go. And so that ended up leaving me not in a lurch, but I needed to come up with a new villain, and that new villain is the one we'll look at the very end. So this is Scylla. I love this one. This is Squall. Squall is the newest member of the Kraken Crew, or was, I guess, before the players killed her. She is wizard-inspired, stat block-wise, and I love this one. I especially love the texture of the coat. I'm not sure. Let me zoom in a little bit more. The texture of this coat is fantastic. Right? And obviously the netting here on the potions sort of echoes the netting on Scylla's head, the gloves, and then also the right here, the ruffles of this this scarf almost look like coral or something, I guess, or not seaweed, but something about this. I can't think of what it reminds me of. But just fantastic. And then her eyeliner sort of echoes the magic, which echoes the potions. Like, there's just a lot that really works with this that I just really love. Really good. Okay. This is Tahome. Tahome is the leader of the Kraken Crew. He was once a human and now has become something else. His sort of moniker was the Deep One because he spent so much time underwater. He's got this gross octopus, I don't know, neck beard thing or tie. I don't know what it is, but it's gross. His skin has gone all, flat and mucusy. His eyes are like shark's eyes, just that dead black of a shark eye. Coral growing out of his head. Rusted armor. Just fantastic. And then this over here. Whoop, whoop. Let's not look at him yet. Whoops. I wanted to zoom in on the magic coming off him, because the magic, right? You can see these white. It echoes the octopus tentacles, right? It's very, or Kraken tentacles, I guess, in this case. Really fantastic. Also, the light, so the light of the magic is reflected on the top of his glove. This is just so good. Mike did such a good job with these. Really fantastic. All right, let's look at the last guy. This is Thresher, the last of the Kraken crew. He's a Sahuagin, I think is how you pronounce it. Rogue-inspired stat block. And he looks like a very happy guy. He looks like he could be your friend if he wasn't trying to, stab you with these rusted knives of his. Let's zoom in a bit and take a look. Look at the detail. It's just fantastic. Oops. Excuse me again. I want to zoom in on this guy's. Look at, he's so happy. I love this guy. A Thresher was actually the member of the Kraken crew to survive the longest. And actually almost escaped. He had acquired, the Kraken crew was trying to free or at least retrieve this magic item that would ultimately free the Kraken, and the players had arrived to stop them from retrieving this magic item, and Thresher actually got his hands on it and turned invisible and was trying to escape. So I came really close to having that recurring villain that I wanted to, even though Thresher was the least intelligent member of the crew and probably wouldn't know what to do after he escaped. So would have had to deal with that conundrum, but it never ended up being a conundrum because the players managed to find this invisible Thresher and kill him before he could actually completely escape. And then I accidentally teased this a moment ago, but this is Mike laid them all out in one, group portrait, which I think is fantastic. And so when we got to that battle between the two, the set piece, the first thing I did was show this to the players, and the players lost their minds that I had art made for this group of villains, because I think that really hit home for them. Oh no, how hard is this going to be if Brian, spent money to commission art for these things? This is not just a normal fight. And ended up being, it was not a normal fight. It was very difficult. It was a blast. But obviously, because they all died, it ended up not being as much of a having as much of an impact as I expected it would, or long-term impact. That's okay, because the looks on their faces when I unveiled this and showed it to them was worth it completely. And every once in a while, I still come back and look at these guys. This was everybody's wallpaper for a while on their computers, was this shot here of the Kraken crew all together. Just so good. Okay, we have one more left, and that is who ended up being the final villain of the last campaign that these characters played in. Okay, and this is Rex's dad. So the character Rex, that black dragonborn rogue, this is his father. His title is the Faceless Wyrm, and his story is an interesting one, where he was originally a hero of the dragonborn people, and then went rogue, was presumed dead, and so Rex was living this life of shame as the son of a dishonored member of Dragonborn society. And then this character obviously ended up not being dead, but while he was away, he had this encounter with a black dragon. And so black dragonborn are resistant to acid, I think, narratively, or in one of the rules, they can even become immune temporarily. But what that meant narratively is that this black dragon captured this character, this NPC, and tortured him with his acid breath, knowing that the dragonborn was resistant to it, which really just allowed the black dragon to draw out the torture, the pain. And so he's called the Faceless Wyrm because, as you can see, his face essentially melted off. So this is what's left of his horn. Most of his scales are melted off. This is all just acid burned, scarred skin, right? And now he's just living in permanent agony, essentially. And he's channeled that agony into rage against the whole world. This is the most bitter, rage-filled character I have ever created. And he's even got on his hammer, he's even got little spikes along the side. So when he grabs it, these are digging into his hand to cause him even more pain, because he only knows pain now. He only lives in pain. There's no happiness in this character anymore. And this is who became the final villain of this campaign that we played in with these characters. And Rex was the one who dealt the killing blow very appropriately. That was not, scripted in any way, just how the dice fell, but it worked really well, and it was a really magic moment at the table. So that's it. This is just me, talking about art that I love and telling you about the artist who made it. Hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all next time. Have a good night.